What would you do if you came home early, only to find your neighbor living in your house, wearing your clothes and drinking your wine, then calling the cops on you? Asterisk, asterisk. That's not a nightmare. That's exactly what happened to me. And the woman behind it all? The most notorious HOA Karen in our entire community. They say the worst neighbors aren't the loud ones or the messy ones. The worst neighbors are the ones who believe they own the neighborhood. The ones who act like the HOA rules give them unlimited power. Karen was that kind of neighbor, nosy, controlling, and obsessed with catching others breaking the rules. My story begins with a business trip. I was supposed to be gone for 3 full weeks. My mansion, my pride and joy, sat behind tall gates on the corner of our quiet cul-de-sac. I had just installed brand new security cameras, reinforced locks, and even smart lighting. I left confident that everything was safe. But here's the twist: my trip ended early. What was supposed to be 3 weeks away turned into only 5 days. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest neighbors. I wanted to surprise my family by coming home. Instead, I was the one who walked straight into a surprise so insane I still can't believe it happened. The day I returned, the sky was gray, heavy with a storm rolling in. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed something strange. The porch light was on. I remembered clearly. I had switched everything off before leaving. My stomach sank. Something wasn't right. Then I saw it. The curtains in my living room were slightly open, and through the gap I spotted movement. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks. But no, the shadow of a person crossed the room. Someone was inside. I pulled up my security app, desperate for answers. Every single camera was offline, disabled. Someone had deliberately shut them off. My pulse started racing. My safe, lockdown mansion had been breached. And then I heard it. Music. Soft at first, but unmistakable. Music, laughter, the sound of TV playing. Someone wasn't just inside. They were living comfortably, as if they owned the place. That's when I spotted the final clue. Parked behind my garage, half hidden from the street, was a golf cart. And sitting on its seat was a clipboard. Not just any clipboard. It was the exact one my neighbor Karen always carried, filled with notes about community violations. My chest went cold. Could it be? Was Karen actually inside my mansion? Before I could process it, the front door swung open, and there she was, Karen, wearing one of my silk robes, holding a glass of wine from my personal cellar, standing on my porch like she had lived there forever. The audacity didn't stop there. She didn't act shocked. She didn't apologize. She looked straight at me, scowled, and pulled out her phone. She started yelling about a trespasser on her property. Within seconds, she had dialed 911 and was calling police on me. Thunder cracked above us, and blue and red lights soon flashed across the street. My heart was racing with rage and disbelief. Karen had been living in my home for days, maybe weeks, wearing my clothes, drinking my wine, and now she was trying to make me look like the criminal. And as the police car pulled up, I realized this was only the beginning, because what happened next was worse than anything I could have imagined. Imagine coming home early from a trip, only to find your neighbor squatting in your mansion, and then watching the police believe her story instead of yours. Sound impossible, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. The flashing blue and red lights cut through the stormy night like knives. I stood in the driveway, drenched in disbelief, as Karen, the woman wearing my robe, sipping my wine, pointed at me like I was some dangerous criminal. She screamed about an intruder who had broken into her home, spinning her lies with the confidence of someone who had been rehearsing them for weeks. The officers stepped out of their car, hands hovering near their belts. My stomach churned. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. This was a trap, and Karen had said it perfectly. She waved her arms dramatically, describing how she had moved in with permission from the HOA board because I had abandoned the property. My jaw nearly hit the ground. Abandoned? I had been gone for 5 days. But Karen painted a picture so convincing, so dripping with false concern, that the officers exchanged uneasy glances, as if they were starting to believe her. I tried to explain. I told them my name, that I was the rightful homeowner, that I had proof inside, deeds, IDs, bills with my address. But Karen wasn't done. She marched back up the porch and picked up an envelope from the counter just inside the door. With a smug grin, she waved it in the air. It was a mailer addressed to current resident. She held it like a golden ticket. "This proves I live here now," she told them. My blood boiled. She was using junk mail as evidence to stake a claim to my mansion. And here's the terrifying part. The officers didn't immediately shut her down. Instead, one of them asked me to step back while they sorted things out. Karen smirked, sipping from her wine glass as if she had already won. The storm rumbled above us, and the rain began to fall. I stood there, water dripping down my face, watching as the officers followed her inside my home. They let her lead them room to room, as if she was giving them a grand tour of her mansion. Everywhere they went, the signs of her invasion were obvious. My clothes scattered across the bedroom floor. My refrigerator raided. My couch covered in her blankets and pillows. But she spun it all as hers. She told them she had just redecorated. That I was some disgruntled ex-tenant trying to force my way back in. It was surreal, like living in a nightmare you can't wake up from. By the time the officers came back outside, their tone had shifted. They weren't treating Karen like an intruder anymore. They were treating me like a potential threat to her. One officer even told me to calm down, to let the HOA handle the dispute. And that's when the final knife twisted. Karen crossed her arms, looked me dead in the eye, and said she was filing a trespassing charge against me. My stomach dropped. If she succeeded, I could be banned from stepping foot in my own mansion. That night, they didn't arrest me, but they warned me not to escalate the situation until it was resolved. I drove away from my own house, humiliated, wet, and furious, while Karen stood in the doorway of my mansion, blowing me a mocking kiss from behind my silk robe. The next few days became a blur of insanity. Every time I returned with paperwork to prove ownership, she found a new way to twist the story. She contacted the HOA, claiming I hadn't paid dues. She called code enforcement, insisting I had left the property in unlivable condition. She even filed noise complaints when I tried to talk to contractors outside. It was like she had been planning this for months. The cameras disabled, the junk mail collected, even her golf cart tucked away like she had set up a permanent residence. And the HOA, they didn't shut her down. They sided with her. That was when I realized this wasn't just Karen freeloading in my mansion. This was Karen trying to steal it. She was attempting to take over my property completely, using every loophole, every rule, every ounce of manipulation she could muster. And the scariest part? With the HOA on her side, she was winning. But I wasn't about to give up. If Karen thought she could erase me from my own home, she had underestimated the wrong neighbor. Because what happened next would expose her in a way no one in our community would ever forget. What happens when an HOA Karen pushes too far? When her lies, her fake claims, and her power games finally come crashing down. This is a story of how her entire scheme unraveled, right in front of the community she once controlled. Asterisk, asterisk. The days after the police warning were pure chaos. Karen strutted around the neighborhood like she had won a prize. From her new perch inside my mansion, she waved at passing cars, gave smug house tours to HOA board members, and even told delivery drivers to list her as the homeowner. It was like she truly believed the mansion was hers. Meanwhile, I was gathering proof. Every document, every record, every shred of evidence that tied me to property. I contacted the county, pulled the official deed, printed out bank statements, mortgage papers, tax receipts. But Karen wasn't sitting idle. She doubled down, filing complaints, calling the cops again and again, and spreading rumors around the neighborhood that I was some disgruntled squatter trying to harass her family. Her audacity was unbelievable. She even threw a housewarming party inside my living room, inviting HOA members to celebrate her new home. Neighbors walked in confused, seeing my family portrait still hanging on the walls. But Karen told them I was obsessive and refused to move out after selling the property to her. The lies stacked higher and higher until they finally toppled. The breakthrough came when I hired a real estate attorney. Together, We filed an emergency claim with the county recorder's office, proving my ownership beyond question. And then, to make matters worse for Karen, we pulled the security company's backup data. She thought she had erased the cameras, but the cloud files were still there, and what those videos showed was damning. Footage of her sneaking into my house the very night I left for my trip. Footage of her dragging bags of clothes inside, disconnecting the cameras, and prancing around my living room in a robe that wasn't hers. When I turned that evidence over, the entire house of cards collapsed. The police returned, this time with a very different tone. Karen's face drained of color as they replayed the footage in front of her, the HOA board, and several shocked neighbors. Her excuses fell apart instantly. She stammered about protecting the community, about maintaining standards, but no one was by it anymore. The HOA board, embarrassed and furious, immediately revoked any unofficial authority she claimed to have. They voted her out of every committee. The police charged her with trespassing, theft, and even fraud for attempting to seize property that wasn't hers. And in the most satisfying moment of all, she was escorted out of my mansion in handcuffs, screaming about how this wasn't over, while wearing the same silk robe she had stolen from my closet. The neighborhood was never the same after that. Her downfall became legend. For years, people whispered about the night the HOA Karen was caught squatting in a mansion she tried to steal. And every time someone asked me about it, I told them the truth. Karen thought she could rewrite reality, but in the end, facts always win. And that's why I'm sharing this story with you. Because HOA Karens are real, and their power only grows when we stay silent. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more unbelievable real-life HOA and Karen drama, make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this video with someone who loves crazy stories as much as you do. You don't want to miss the next one, because trust me, the world is full of Karens, and their schemes are only getting wilder.